So the thing is, it's just harder to fit, and a lot of the lists that are Jund Sacrifice 2-red is a tall order, so that's why you might have seen less copies. But make no mistakes, the decks that can run in the sideboard, it is a relevant card.
Seeing the opening hands here, a pair of Growth Spirals, which are not threats among themselves, but they are a ramp catastrophe. I mean that in the best of ways. Going Growth Spiral into Growth Spiral or Growth Spiral into Uro is a great way to start out a game for Simon. And we see Jacob Wilson doing a mulligan and ending up with a 1-lander here. Not always what you want to see, but with 2 Cauldron Familiars, at least you'd have some presence on the board.
I think that land coming into play tapped. This has to be shit. The first hand had 2 pretty dead cards. Not always dead, but pretty dead with no threats. This just doesn't look like a playable hand to me. So go to 5 and hope for the best. And on Jacob Wilson's side, 5 lands, 2 Growth Spiral. I don't think you can mulligan hands like that ever, no matter what the matchup is. So got to keep it. But yeah, I like both of those mulligans. So yeah, probably not seeing any of these fatal pushes in hand.
No. Got to get rid of those so you can actually get the threats out. We've got Witch's Oven, Mayhem Devil, and Woe Strider.
Yeah, no black mana though. Phyrexian Tower does generate black mana, but not in a spot like this.
Personally, I'm rooting for Simon in all of these matches just because of a deck preference. I'm extremely biased, and I'd rather see Sacrifice do its thing. So we're seeing a turn 1 Thoughtseize, get a choice between Woe Strider, which can be escaped from the graveyard, and Mayhem Devil, who is just a powerhouse.
Yeah, Woe Strider gives more selection, so I would presume that that's why it was taken over Mayhem Devil, is that Mayhem Devil as a card without any synergy is just a free for free. It doesn't do anything else. You also have 2 Aether Gusts in the deck that you could draw into with these Growth Spirals, and that does interact with Mayhem Devil, whereas it doesn't interact with Woe Strider. That was a really good pickup, though, with that Cauldron Familiar.
Getting Cauldron Familiar with the Oven already on the board, and Phyrexian Tower. That's a good little cat sacrifice snack you can make in the future.
Yeah. Obviously goes for the mana-intensive play. It also technically deals the most damage. But wow. I mean, Jacob Wilson did ramp nicely and does get to cycle some of these lands at least.
It's still a lot of lands. We saw the double Growth Spiral. Now there's 5 lands on the battlefield. There's a Triome which can be cycled, and Fabled Passage, which ever so slightly thins the deck, and Fetid Pools as well.
That Witch's Oven is what's needed. Look, Simon mulligan to 5. That's not a good spot. And got Thoughtseized on turn. Well, if not Jacob's turn 1.
It was turn 1. Turn 1 Thoughtseize. Still ended up with double Oven with a cat. Mayhem Devil on the board. That is so much damage.
Yeah, we see though Nissa, Who Shakes the World, and Extinction Event being the 2 cards drawn, and those are going to be really nice.
I think Extinction Event, being able to hit both of these creatures and force the sacrificing, that's pretty good.
Yeah, only I wonder what Simon's target is going to be, because with that sequence of going Nissa and Extinction Event, you get to, because that's possible, you can play Nissa here.
Yes, you can either do the damage to the Nissa, to the face, or to the land.
Right. So I wonder what Simon's going to choose here. The land would actually kind of surprise me at this point. I think Jacob Wilson has access to more mana and you'd actually want the free in play because I'm playing the Firstborn. And I don't think there's enough pings for Nissa, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Simon just go for the head, because you have Cauldron Familiar and 2 Witch's Oven. So, yeah, I feel that we're going to see probably a lot of 1 damage.
And this is a
triggers
sequence.
Go to Jacob Wilson, yeah.
Yeah, having to walk through this is one of those hard-to-execute plays if you are a newer player, especially playing on Magic Arena, knowing exactly how to sacrifice your cats, bring it back, get the food, and sacrifice to the Phyrexian Tower as well to maximize the number of things that result in your graveyard rather than an exile. Anything that's in the graveyard, if it's a cat, can come back with the food in the future, or if it's Woe Strider, it can just be fuel for the escape.
Look at this. Simon prioritizing this Nissa to this degree.
And there's a little bit of extra damage going on to the face. Every time the Cauldron Familiar returns to play, it is draining for 1.
Yeah, this is a close choice. I mean, 6 damage when your opponent's essentially at 9. Yeah, Yeah, because here you get to sacrifice the Cauldron's Familiar to Phyrexian Tower. Wow, decided really to just get rid of the Nissa because at this point there's no food left. So Simon is going to have to draw a creature to keep this cat going.
Yeah, and that Nissa is actually still alive for this moment. Left at 1. Oh, but that claim the firstborn.
That was perfect.
The knowledge of that draw, we know it would have been lethal had all that damage gone face. But of course, hindsight is 2020. Love to see Nissa smushed by her own forest.
That said, I'm still surprised about the decision to put Nissa to 1. I think that was enough damage, especially with Cauldron's Familiar and 2 Witches Oven, that I almost would have liked to see that hit Jacob Wilson. But then you lose probably to an Uro or a Hydroid Krasis, so that's the decision. This is pretty good, though, because you get to generate 4 mana. It is 1 short of a Woe Strider, but you still get to... and because of that, we'll probably actually not see it sack Phyrexian Tower, because you have enough mana to get Gigantha.
Gigantha come into hand. And the Cauldron Familiar now has a food, so it can be cycled. And we saw a land draw for Jacob Wilson, cycling the fetid pools. And drawing yet another land. This is what happens when your deck is almost 50% lands. Sometimes you just draw them over and over. And even though we do have these cycling lands now in Historic, it still feels bad to draw land. Sure, you can play one of them per turn. When what you really want is either a way to defend yourself, gain a lot of life, get some card advantage. Lands ain't doing that.
I mean, yeah, but you're playing Growth Spiral, and there's a concession to be made there. Interestingly, here Simon decided to kind of leave Sheaves down on the Cauldron's Familiar with the knowledge of, look, if Jacob Wilson has removal for this and I can't continue the chain, I can always top deck a creature. And if I draw a land, I'm getting closer to casting a Gigantha or this Woe Strider eventually.
I love that you can Phyrexian Tower the Scrap Heap Scrounger to get the double black mana. But we see there's just a fatal push here. The Cat Oven cycle getting that drain going on. And then there's a 3-2 and a 1-1, which can swing it face next turn.
Yeah, and here you return it because if the cat dies, then you win, pretty much. So I think we'll see your push on Scrounger on upkeep since the Phyrexian Tower was up. But yeah, I think this is one-off lethal, if I'm not mistaken, since you attack with the cat and you can return it twice. But it is looking pretty dire here for Jacob Wilson.
Simon choosing to use the Oven to sacrifice that Scrounger.
Yeah, makes sense. You have access to Phyrexian Tower.
Ooh, and that's a great draw, getting the Midnight Reaper.
I think an untapped land was actually lethal, potentially. I'm just trying to remember, just because the Woe Strider allows you to sacrifice the Cauldron's Familiar. Might have been one off still anyways. Midnight Reaper is really strong, as you point out, though.
Midnight Reaper gets some card draw at the expense of life every single time one of your creatures dies. And here we're seeing a second Nissa coming out. Hello, Nissa. Nissa able to turn a creature or a land into a creature, putting 3 +1/+1 counters on it. That land does have Vigilance. Oh, and swinging in.
Might as well, but the game's over, right?
The game is over. You may as well, I don't know, get a little bit of a spiteful attack in.
Yeah, game is over. Simon waits because there's no need to attack with it.
And you don't need to attack, but I feel like swinging in with the Dreadhorde Butcher just feels so good you gotta do it.
I like preserving the mental resources personally, but that's just me.
Oh, I like to go all out on these fatal swings. I know that it's game 1, but it's just such a great, all right, and I want to hit you for 7 damage instead of 3 because it's more, and more is better.
That's fair. Oh well.
I think we're gonna
have lethal on tap.
Oh no! I was thinking maybe we'd even see the Mayhem Devil came out for some extra BM, but a respectful nod to your opponent to kill them succinctly and cleanly. So we're going to take a short break for sideboarding. And then we're going to come back, see how they switched up their decks, and watch game 2. And we're back. This is round 3. We're watching game 2 between Jacob Wilson and Simon Görtzen. We just got to see these sideboard changes get made, and I'm not surprised in the least to see most of these come in and out of the decks. Anything stand out to you, Eduardo?
Most of this seems reasonable to me. The only thing I want to point out for people watching, the Scrappy Scroungers look good because they're 2-drop threat, and they are decent. The main problem with them is that they're very poor against Cry of the Carnarium. So that's why you see Scrap Heap Scrounger come back, is because it's so weak against the main sideboard plan that Jacob Wilson is bringing it. So that's why that card comes out.
I know that this sideboarding was no fire, no steel. We see that Angrath in the hand and Act of Treason. We're going to be a little bit of critter stealing going on this game.
Yeah. And Act of Treason is a nod to Elder Gargaroth and Doom Whisper, since Claim the Firstborn can't take those cards. So it gives you a hedge, because generally the tempo from Claim the Firstborn in a matchup like this is less important than just making sure you can take their threat.
I would love to see an Elder Gargaroth, let's say, borrowed during this game. Borrowed, maybe sacrificed, because you get that attack, on attack ability. You get the choice between a 3/3 beast, drawing a card, and gaining 3 life. It would be a fun thing to see. Oh, and here it comes. This is an early Nissa.
Yeah, and that's why you see Noxus Grass be boarded in. Why it doesn't look that great against a deck like the Sultai deck, but you, especially on the draw, with that extra card, it's okay to have a few more conditional cards like these, and you really need it in these spots. Like, if there wasn't that Noxus Grass, Simon would probably have been lights out in this game. And as a result, though, Simon has a decent shot instead. There's still going to be a Hydroid Crisis most likely this turn to draw a bunch of cards, but it's not completely game over.
Yeah, and with the follow-up of Angrath stealing a creature, getting potentially an attack, and then sacrificing it to Priest of the Forgotten Gods to kill the other creature, the next turn is shaping up to be a good one for Simon. Oh, unless it's Extinction Event.
That was a call from Jacob Wilson, respecting the Priest of the Forgotten Gods in this spot, because your land is going to go away anyway, so there's not really a cost to losing the land. But see why Angrath is so strong, is wherever Jacob Wilson had decided to play the Krasis, you would have taken a ton of damage and lost the Krasis anyways to Priest. But as a result, you have Angrath the Flame Chain making Jacob Wilson discard a card. So no matter what Jacob Wilson's decision was, he was behind.
There are so many Act of Treason effects in this deck that you have to respect it if you want to play well against the deck. Speaking of which, Angrath is an Act of Treason that has an additional sacrifice clause. And here comes Mayhem Devil. We're going to see the plus first. Oh, and we skip a second ahead. Yep, there is Hydroid Crisis. It gets sacrificed at the end of turn because it is 2 CMC, and damage gets done to face.
Yeah. This was a difficult-ish decision. The truth is the Hydroid Crisis otherwise would probably stick around because there wasn't another sacrifice outlet. So that's why you saw the -3 is, if Simon decided not to use the -3, you're essentially going, I'm going to plus, and next turn Angrath is going to free. So then I have to -3 anyways. Now, the Nissa that's top deck is actually going to be a little problematic.
A little.
Well,
having a 3/3 attacker that puts Angrath in danger. Come on, we only have one Minotaur Planeswalker in all of Magic the Gathering. We have to treat him with love and respect.
Yeah. I mean, Jacob Wilson will by attacking it. This is actually going to be kind of an interesting sequence, potentially. I don't know if Mayhem Devil trades here. I don't think Angrath is that strong, but I might be wrong. At 2 loyalty. I think I've had more than you might block. You have access to Active Treason as well. And Active Treason on the land plus Mayhem Devil does get rid of Nissa. We might actually see Fatal Push get onto the Overgrown Tomb, which, seems bad. But,
killing your
the
own
tempo
land.
loss is fine, yeah.
You do what you gotta do. Saving Nissa when you have a couple extra lands to sacrifice is a good way to clog up this board and stay in the game.
Yeah, it's extremely mana inefficient, though. You only get to play one spell this turn, either Gigant for the Wellspring or Active Treason. Wouldn't be surprised to see Simon Active Treason, Overgrown Tomb. We saw in game 1 the respect that Simon gives to Nissa. So as a result, I think we're going to see Active Treason just because it could get there.
And you want to do this before it gets taken if you want to stop your opponent from using it to get some mana.
Yeah, that's correct.
And that Giganta is known. The Giganta is visible. It was put from the sideboard into the hand as a companion. 5 mana means Giganta would come out this turn.
Yeah.
And Fatal Push. Goodbye. As an Overgrown Tome who had a very short life.
Paulo Vitor Damo de Rosa put it, even if it doesn't seem like there's a decision, as long as you deny your opponent the maximum amount of options, that's the correct decision. Whatever denies your opponent options is better in a vacuum.
So we see the land come down for a Castle Locktwain activation. Being very careful about this tapping, trying to make sure that the most flexible amount of mana is kept up, especially for Uro. Graveyard's got some fuel in it. Mayhem Devil gets to ping on the sacrifice. But are we going to see Uro escaped this turn? I believe there's 5 other cards in the graveyard.
There's the mana for it. That said, you could do it. It does open you up this turn to acclaim the Firstborn / Active Treason effect, whereas Scavenging Ooze doesn't. And is going to be relevant
instead. And the Skoos can exile 2 creatures from the graveyard. Or 2 non-creatures.
This is looking really bad for Simon. We'll probably see the Uro come back next turn, because even if Simon had an effect to get rid of the Uro, it's not that problematic for Jacob Wilson. Because you have an additional land you can probably throw under the bus. And in the meantime, this Ooze can get rid of the Woe Strider, so that's no longer a factor, meaning that Simon essentially is cardless. And the Rakdos Sacrifice deck, not really known to get card advantage. There's no Sacrifice engine in play, so even a Midnight Reaper top deck or something like that would probably be insufficient. So I think Jacob Wilson is going to just slowly take over this game, and then it's going to ramp up extremely fast because of how Nissa works.
We're going to see Scavenging Ooze getting +1/+1 counters for the creatures that are exiled, and also gaining 1 life. It's not super relevant at this point in the game, but very often a Scavenging Ooze's itty-bitty bit of life gain makes just a little bit of life. It's all you need. Like when you're up against an aggressive deck, it's like, I'm going to gain 3 life, and I'm still in it, because that is 1 bolt's worth of life. And Uro coming from the graveyard, and there's a Commit in hand, and Commit is actually 2 separate cards. It is Commit and Memory, which can only be cast from the grave.
Yeah, I'd say here the Commit is mostly just insurance. Essentially, you get to play activate Castle Locktwain, and later you get to commit. You could also commit on this attack, get rid of the Gigantha, and there's not too much that can go wrong. Since Jacob Wilson's board is disdeveloped and at 20 life, you're not really worried about anything, so you could press your advantage here.
Taking a peek at the graveyard, just a Noxious Grasp and an Angrath there. Hydroid Crisis in Jacob's graveyard, though, could give another +1 counter to the Scavenging Ooze.
I don't think Simon can block, but I don't think there's any decision that Simon can make this turn that will.
Oh, we're seeing a double block.
Yeah, because that would get rid of the scavenging news, but I just don't really see a way out for Simon here.
No, I think that this is an abandonment of hope. Kind of an act of desperation here. Especially with that Uro able to attack next turn. That will be lethal.
Yeah, and this is around. It's pretty problematic.
So how do you feel about memory being cast in a game like this when your opponent is empty-handed? Don't bother unless you absolutely need to.
No, memory. The problem with memory, right? Without Narset, is that memory reloads your opponents, and and they essentially get to use the cards first. I would just not memory if I'm at all ahead. I would only use memory if I'm very far behind, or if I have 0 cards to my opponent's 5 or 6 or something.
So we're going to be taking a quick break while our 2 competitors sideboard, and we will be right back. Welcome back. You are watching the Kaldheim Split League Weekend. We're going into Game 3 between Jacob Wilson, who's playing Sultai Midrange, and Simon Görtzen, who's on Rakdos Sacrifice. Both players have 1 win so far, but who's going to be able to close the deal?
Yep. And on the draw, you want the extra cheap interactive spell, whereas Hydrocrisis on the play is a little more necessary because you need to deploy frets being on the play.
And we saw Görtzen keeping things the same, even though going on the play here, getting to be very aggressive. And that is a strong opening hand. We got Cat, Priest, and Mayhem Devil lined up neatly for turn 1 and 2, and potentially 3 if there's another mana source that shows up.
Yeah.
Oh, and Dreadhorde Butcher drawn off the top. That's a much better turn, too, because we're going to see this thing get bigger and bigger over time. Cry to Carnarium does neatly take care of it if it stays a 2-2. But this is the downside of being on the draw. It's going to be a 3-3 by the time there's 3 mana.
Yeah, Dreadhorde Butcher on the draw and on the play is such a different card. It's not even close. Like, on the play, it's one of the best cards you could possibly have on turn 2. And on the draw, it's okay, but it walks into kind of everything your opponent does. By the way, you saw Jacob Wilson obviously here take the Mayhem Devil because of the access to Cry of the Carnarium.
And Cry of the Carnarium still taking out 2 of the 3 creatures on the board, making it a 2-for-1. It's a good piece of removal. But that Dreadhorde Butcher is going to do some work.
Yep. And you have access to Woe Strider, which I like playing before Midnight Reaper. Midnight Reaper, I'd love that card as much as possible. I'd like to set up for that card as much as possible, having the sacrifice outlet in play. And you kind of play it without a sack outlet if it's like your only free drop, or you kind of have to roll with it. But yeah, much better to start with Woe Strider and then roll into Midnight Reaper.
I also like that gives the 4 damage on demand if needed. If there's perhaps a languish, you'd get to sacrifice it in advance.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I was going to say, like, you play Uro here, but if you don't hit, this game is over. Because you were looking for a cheap interactive spell. If you didn't hit it, that's it. This is
this is
lethal damage.
With the Maelstrom Pulse there, that's we're going to do 7 damage plus 5 on the sacrifice.
Yeah, it's lethal damage.
That's lethal.
Yeah. Play Uro, you try to get an interactive spell, but if you don't get it, you're done. I think with 1 mana, there's nothing. You could be concerned about Tilden, even if you think that if that card is sideboarded about 100% of the time. But yeah, here it's literally nothing.
Mana, so that is a win for Simon. I think both of us were right to be rooting for Rakdos Sacrifice. and love to see the game closed out with a nice aggressive play on that Dreadhorde Butcher.